Hails and welcome to Black Metal Review. This time we have a band from Spain. Technically speaking, this I guess is a one-man project, not self-financed one. This is a single release, Vinyl Monday. And now, first let's start with the name. I'm not sure if this is more so-called of an English name, so we say it's supposed to be Awaketh or some kind of a Awaketh. Well, nonetheless, here it is with kind of a demo compilation kind of a thing. Here we have on side A, we have demo 1, MMXX, that is, I guess, 2020. And then we have demo 2, MMXX as well. So, two demos on one LP. Kind of back to basics, if you ask me, when it comes to the graphics here, or the cover image, and there is nothing else inside either except this rather dusty vinyl. I don't know how it already got so much dust. I think during the renovation project I lost my, the vinyl brush. Well, nonetheless, it will be found at some point, and obviously the lack of brush here wasn't exactly the problem enjoying this album, because this is very raw and primitive black metal. I guess it kind of boils down to the very fact that this is, after all, a demo compilation. Chose just to make sure. Nope. Nothing but blackness. Nothing but void inside this LP version. So very back to basics kind of a release. I think it does total justice to this kind of a raw end of black metal. So here on Metal Archive site, this band from Spain. No members listed, no info whatsoever. So might be even more than that, but because band photos show only one guy, I'm assuming, making this bold assumption that this is one-man project. Anyway, here it is, compilation 2021, and including demos from 2022. A and B sides, two different demos. Now, I'll be honest with you. This kind of a raw end of black metal is only for a marginal audience. The kind of very dedicated, who can handle way beyond your typical big-ass names. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about Cradle of Filth, Dimmu Borgir, and Behemoth, but even with the kind of, Dark Thronian era, Marduk, and the kind of like. So, if we would put this into three scales, 3 being the purest and more polished and nice-sounding black metal. Check that out. Now, then there are these somewhat raw end, but not exactly primitive black metal. Like I said, I guess, in a way, Dark Throne and the like would go into that department. Not necessarily maybe bands like Vatine. I mean, they're between the class 3 and true here. But then we have these really, really primitive bands. I'm talking about bands like Ilion or even early Graveland, bands like Hot, and a lot of those modern Portuguese bands. That is the ones that come from the real, raw, and very unpolished ways of doing black metal. The kind of a production that makes all the early Burzum demos sound like, hey, pro-done tapes and all. Now, if you can handle that one, maybe Awaketh has something for you to offer. If not, if you think, that one has a little weaker tone, that vocalist cannot sing clearly, those drums don't sound like real drums, and so forth. If you're one of those people, don't even bother with this one. This is for the kind of a hardcore black metal audience. And by hardcore, I don't mean hardcore genre. I don't mean hardcore punk. But you have to be able to just, swallow the pill and slide it down into the rabbit hole where there is no good production and all that stuff. You have to be able to handle single individual, raw, primitive, and plain, stripped down kind of riffs, which are very bare bones in so many ways. And then you have this raw end of black metal production, which is something that some people would say, yes, very rehearsal room kind of like demo sound. And if that is your alley, right up your alley, then Awaketh could have something for you. Now, talking about this music, when I say it reminds me of this Portuguese scene, the thing here is, this is kind of a production with these two tapes put in this compilation, that when you enter your own rehearsal room, your place, and you start just single mic use, starting the overall recording, beat guitars, bass, and drums, this is roughly how it sounds. Why do I know it for sure, for a fact, rather than just making wild guesses? Is because, well, of my own bands. Now, I'm not a recording engineer or professional when it comes to these things, but having been in a few bands, I roughly know how it sounds when you have only a couple of mics. Maybe you have one overhead mic for the drums or one for bass, bass drums, and one of the mics is just taking care of everything else. And then you just play together and that's how it sounds. Or alternatively, like people nowadays might do, you just set your phone or, I don't know, iPad or somewhere in the corner and you start recording. So you take everything here without the possibility of mixing different tracks and all, and then you get this very, very raw black metal sound, which is not very clear when it comes to different instruments and all. Now, I'm not saying like this is a bad thing. It's just something that you have to kind of live with when we're talking about this kind of stuff. Now, sometimes this production, why I mention it so much, is doing kind of a disfavor for the songwriting. That is, those simple riffs sometimes get a little bit too messy, too noisy, because the kind of overhead microphone kind of recording is going to just kind of blur things a little bit too much. Now, like I said, once again, it's not a problem if you can deal with it. If you come from the tape trading background from the 80s or early 90s, you're probably getting used to it already. I mean, we're talking about early Beherit and the like recordings where, you didn't exactly have proper studio setup for your raw end and primitive black metal ones. The riffs here are quite simple and to the bone, bare-boned to be said, and in that degree, this actually is pretty listenable. It's quite decent, but sometimes it's kind of also annoying when the overall sound is kind of a mess. It's like the guitars are lacking power, and same goes for the drums and bass as well. Now, the vocals are raw, but then again, they don't really, save the whole catering when there are minor faults here and there. I guess these riffs would, have more influence over the whole recording if only it had better production. So overall, this is pretty interesting, but it kind of lacks the power. So this is for hardcore people in that sense. But I like what the band is doing, or if it's solo approach, it doesn't really matter here. But like I said, this is only for dedicated audience, acquired taste only, if you will. So if you like raw black metal, for real, you will really like primitive sound and all that stuff, and you feel disgusted by those bigger bands going to very pro studio and sounding everything so polished and nice and clean and sterile, then this could be your cup of tea. But if not, I guess I cannot really recommend it to you. Links are provided in the description box, so figure out for yourself. Now, this is obviously available on vinyl as well as digital. I don't know if there will be CD or tape versions later on. The story doesn't really reveal that. But vinyl and digital are the formats to go with if you are into this kind of stuff. And if not, well, always time for another one. Take care and see you soon with more reviews coming your way.